Hello students, welcome once again to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to read another lessons from your NCERT English textbook, An Alien Hand. Let's check it out. Lesson number 4, The Cop and the Anthem. Before we read, have you ever found yourself in a situation in which what happened was the opposite of what you expected? If so, you are familiar with the irony of the situation, which is often embarrassing. The story that you are going to read has a number of such situations. Okay, let's find it out. Sophie is a homeless, jobless man. Winter is fast approaching, and Sophie must have a place to stay. Sophie comes to a decision at last. So the story is about a homeless man called Sophie. Let's read the story. It seems intriguing. Let's find it out. Sophie moved restlessly on his seat in Madison Square. There are certain signs to show that winter is coming. Birds begin to fly south. People want new warm clothes. And Sophie moves restlessly on his seat in the park. When you see these signs, you know that winter is near. A death leaf fell at Sophie's feet. That was a special sign for him that winter was coming. It was time for all who lived in Madison Square to prepare. Sophie's mind now realized that fact. The time had come. He had to find some way to take care of himself during the cold weather, and therefore he moved restlessly on his seat. Sophie's hopes for the winter were not very high. He was not thinking of sailing away on a ship. He was not thinking of southern skies or of the Bay of Naples. 3 months in the prison on Blackwell's Island was what he wanted. 3 months of food every day and a bed every night. 3 months saved from the cold north wind and saved from cops. This is what Sophie wanted most in the world. For years, Blackwell's Island had been his winter home. Richer New Yorkers made their plans to go to Florida or to the shore of the Mediterranean Sea each winter. Sophie made his small plans for going to the island, and now the time had come. 3 big newspapers, some under his coat and some over his legs, had not kept him warm during the night in the park. So Sophie was thinking of the island. There were places in the city where he could go and ask for food and a bed. This would be given to him. He could move from one building to another, and he would be taken care of through the winter, but he liked Blackwell's Island better. Before we continue reading, let's check out this word's meaning. Southern skies, warmer places. Blackwell's Island, name of a prison. If Sophie went to prison, the government would look after his food and stay. Cops, policeman, American English. Okay. Sophie's spirit was proud. If he went to any of these places, there were certain things he had to do. In one way or another, he would have to pay for what they gave him. They would not ask him for money, but they would make him wash his whole body. That is a problem. They would make him answer questions. They would want to know everything about his life. No, prison was better than that. The prison had rules that he would have to follow, but in prison, a gentleman's own life was still his own life. Sophie, having decided to go to the island, at once began to move towards his desire. Sophie does his best to be on the wrong side of the law. He tries 3 tricks, all in vain. The fear that no court will ever catch him makes him sick at heart. There were many easy ways of doing this. The most pleasant way was to go and have a good dinner at some fine restaurant. Then he would say that he had no money to pay, and then a court would be called. It would all be done very quietly. The court would arrest him. He would be taken to a judge. The judge would do the rest. Sophie left his seat and walked slowly out of Madison Square to the place where the great street called Broadway and Fifth Avenue meet. He went across this wide space and started north on Broadway. He stopped at a large and brightly lighted restaurant. This was where the best food and the best people in the best clothes appeared every evening. Sophie believed that above his legs he looked all right. His face was clean. His coat was good enough. If he could get to a table, he believed that success would be his. The part of him that would be seen above the table would look all right. The waiter would bring him what he asked for. He began thinking of what he would like to eat. In his mind, he could see the whole dinner. The cost would not be too high. He did not want the restaurant people to feel any real anger. But the dinner would leave him filled and happy for the journey to his winter home. But as Sophie put his foot inside the restaurant door, the head waiter saw his broken old shoes and the torn clothes that covered his legs. Strong and ready hands turned Sophie round and moved him quietly and quickly outside again. Sophie turned off Broadway. It seemed that this most easy way to the island was not to be his. He must think of some other way of getting there. At the corner of 6th Avenue was a shop with a white glass window bright with electric lights. Sophie picked up a big stone and threw it through the glass. People came running around the corner. A cop was the first among them. Sophie stood still and his smile when he saw the cop. "Where is the man that did that?" asked the cop. "Don't you think that I might have done it?" said Sophie. He was friendly and happy. What he wanted was coming towards him. But the cop's mind would not consider Sophie. Men who break windows do not stop there to talk to cops. They run away as fast as they can. The cop saw a man further along the street, running. He ran after him, and Sophie, sick at heart, walked slowly away. He had fell 2 times. Across the street was another restaurant. It was not so fine as the one on Broadway. The people who went there were not so rich. Its food was not so good. Into this Sophie took his old shoes and his torn clothes, and no one stopped him. He sat down at the table and was soon eating a big dinner. When he had finished, he said that he had no money. "Get busy and call a court," said Sophie, "and don't keep a gentleman waiting." "No cough for you," said the waiter. He called another waiter. The 2 waiters threw Sophie upon his left ear on the hard street outside. He stood up slowly one part at a time and beat the dust from his clothes. Prison seemed only a happy dream. The island seemed very far away. A cop who was standing near laughed and walked away. Sophie started moving again. When he stopped, he was near several theaters. In this part of the city, streets are brighter and hearts are more joyful than in other parts. Women and men in rich warm coats move happily in the winter air. A sudden fear caught Sophie. No cop was going to arrest him. Sophie tries his luck twice again, but cops remain indifferent as ever. Sophie is suddenly reminded of his childhood home and mother and resolves to turn over a new leaf. Feeling a hand on his arm, Sophie turns around to see the broad face of a cop. Then he came to another cop, standing in front of a big theater. He thought of something else to try. He began to shout as if he had too much to drink. His voice was as loud as he could make it. He danced, he cried out, and the cop turned his back to Sophie and said to a man standing near him, "It's one of those college boys. He won't hurt anything. We have orders to let them shout." Sophie was quiet. Was no cop going to touch him? He began to think of the island as if it were as far away as a star. He pulled his thin coat around him. The wind was very cold. Then he saw a man in a shop, buying a newspaper. The man's umbrella stood beside the door. Sophie stepped inside the shop, took the umbrella, and walked slowly away. The man followed him quickly. "My umbrella," he said. "Oh, is it?" said Sophie. "Why don't you call a cop?" "I took it." "Your umbrella? Why don't you call a cop? There is one standing at the corner." The man walked more slowly. Sophie did the same. But he had a feeling that he was going to fail again. The cop looked at the two men. "I," said the umbrella man, "that is, you know how these things happen. If that's your umbrella, I'm very sorry. I found it this morning in a restaurant. If you say it's yours, I hope you will." "It's mine," cried Sophie with anger in his voice. The umbrella man hurried away. The cop helped a lady across the street. Sophie walked east. He threw the umbrella as far as he could throw it. He talked to himself about cops and what he thought of them, because he wished to be arrested. They seemed to believe he was like a king who could do no wrong. At last, Sophie came to one of the quiet streets on the side of the city. He turned here and began to walk south towards Madison Square. He was going home, although home was only a seat in a park. But at a very quiet corner, Sophie stopped. Here was his old childhood home. Through one window, he could see a soft light shining. That had been his living room, where he had spent many happy, peaceful moments. Sweet music came to Sophie's ears and seemed to hold him there. The moon was above, peaceful and bright. There were few people passing. He could hear birds high above him, and the music that came from the room held Sophie there, for he had known it well long ago. In those days, his life contained such things as mothers and flowers and high hopes and friends and clean thoughts and clean clothes. This line is beautiful. Let me repeat it. In those days, his life contained such things as mothers and flowers and high hopes and friends and clean thoughts and clean clothes. There was a sudden and wonderful change in his soul. He saw with sick fear how he had fallen. He saw his worthless days, his wrong desires, his dead hopes, the lost power of his mind. And also in a moment his heart answered this change in his soul. He would fight to change his life. He would pull himself out of the mud. He would make a man of himself again. There was time. He was young enough. He would find his old purpose in life and follow it. That sweet music had changed him. Tomorrow he would find work. A man had once offered him a job. He would find that man tomorrow. He would be somebody in the world. He would. Sophie felt a hand on his arm. He looked quickly around into the broad face of the corpse. "What are you doing hanging around here?" asked the corpse. "Nothing," said Sophie. "You think I believe that?" said the corpse. Full of his new strength, Sophie began to argue, and it is not wise to argue with a New York court. "Come along," said the court. 3 months prison on Blackwell's Island, said the judge to Sophie next morning. Oh, Henry. So this story has been written by O. Henry. Okay, a very beautiful story it is. Let's check out the exercise. Answer the following questions. What are some of the signs of approaching winter referred to in the text? Write true or false against each of the following. Sophie did not want to go to prison. Sophie had been to prison several times. It was not possible for Sophie to survive in the city through the winter. Sophie had to answer questions of a personal nature. What was Sophie's first plan? Why did it not work? But the corp's mind would not consider Sophie. What did the corp not consider and why? We have orders to let them out. What is a policeman referring to? Write true or false against each of the following. Sophie stole a man's umbrella. The owner of the umbrella offered to give it to Sophie. The man had stolen the umbrella that was now Sophie's. Sophie threw away the umbrella. There was a sudden and wonderful change in his soul. What brought about the change in Sophie? Discuss the following topics in groups. Suppose no cough came at the end, what would Sophie's life be like through the winter? Retell an episode in the story which is a good example of irony in its situation. Okay. These exercises you have to try it yourself. Let me explain and summarize the whole lesson for you. The Cough and the Anthem is a story written by O. Henry. It is about a homeless and jobless person named Sophie. So basically, Sophie was a homeless and jobless man. He noticed that winter was fast approaching. Winter was coming. He would not be able to spend nights in the park now because of the cold weather. He thought of getting a shelter in winter. He could not dream big like southern skies or Bay of Naples. So he thought of spending the next 3 months in the prison on Blackwell's Island, where he would get food and bed. Where he would get food to eat and bed to sleep. At any other place in the city, he would have to pay for food and bed. So Sophie thought of going against the law. First of all, he decided to go to a fine restaurant and enjoy a good dinner. Then he would say that he had no money to pay the bill. Naturally, the police would be called and he would be sent to prison by the judge. Sophie went to a big restaurant but was moved quietly outside by the head waiter because of his poor appearance. His plan failed. Sophie then tried a second trick. He picked up a stone and threw it on a glass window of a big shop. After this, he stood still and waited for the cop to arrest him. But the cop just did not suspect him because people who do such mischiefs usually ran away, and he was standing there smiling and waiting for the court. Sophie tried his luck once more. He went to a simple restaurant. He enjoyed dinner and said he had no money to pay the bill. But the owner did not bother to call the police. He just threw him out. Now prison too seemed a far-off dream. Sophie was wandering aimlessly in the town, feeling jealous of the rich. He posed to be a drunkard in front of the court, but the court just would not arrest him. He then picked up the umbrella of the man and thought that he would be handed over to the police. But the man himself was a thief who had stolen the umbrella in the morning. On his way back to his park, Sophie saw his childhood home. He stood there and listened to the sweet music which was being played by the new owner. He remembered his past, which was full of hopes and friends. Now he felt ashamed of his worthless days and his wrong desires. He experienced a change of heart. He thought of changing himself. He would find purpose in life and work, and he would prove himself. But then suddenly a cough caught him and asked him why he was hanging around for nothing. He suspected him to be planning something evil. The cop arrested him, and the next morning, the judge sent him to prison for the next 3 months. It appears true that sometimes man proposes and God disposes. Man proposes and God disposes. This is a great irony. So, students, irony is basically something that happens which is not expected. When we expect something, but what actually happens is the opposite. This is a very beautiful story.